What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Last week, well, I had my first guest on, and it seems like, I don't know, forever. Been a couple months. Been quite a long time since I had someone on. I had my buddy Ryan Laird on. Shout out to you, my man. I appreciate you coming on the show last week. And we dove into the week one of the NFL. We made our thoughts, our opinions, our predictions on some of the outcomes of all the games in week one. Judging based on the results of week one, we were very mixed when it came to right and wrong, that's for sure. And then I also released another college football episode on Thursday last week, so I really appreciate you all checking that one out. And today, obviously, I'm back by myself, but we will be having more people on in the near future. I look forward to that, and just BSing about NFL and college football. It's a great time for sports, and this is the best time of year for sports, so we're all here for it, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. So today we are going to dive into the recap of week two in college football. I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions on a couple topics in college football, and I'm going to make some predictions going forward, and I'm also going to go over week one in the NFL, and there's a couple other NFL stories that came out week one. And then we're going to go into week two for the NFL. And mainly going forward for the NFL, not necessarily predictions on all the games for week two in the NFL. But as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So let's get started today. So college football week two is in the books, and oh my lord, did we have some shocking games happen this past weekend. Notre Dame. You guys screwed me out of a big-time win in my parlay on FanDuel, so we're going to talk about Notre Dame real soon. But some quick takeaways for week two of college football. Obviously, I think the Georgia Bulldog, it's a mix. The number one team in the nation. A lot of people, want to put one team on a pedestal and everybody else just kind of falls in line. That's usually how it goes throughout the history of college football. There's always one team that truly sticks out, and you can look at them and say, yes, that team is well-rounded, well-coached, well at the quarterback, skill position, defense, everything. Typically, a number one team really stands out for all those right reasons. But this year, I can make an argument 3 of those teams fit that criteria. There can be a mix of 3 teams to be the number one overall team in America right now. And I think that's a 3-way tie for me, at least. In regards to ranking them, I personally have my own ranking for these teams, but you can make an argument for all 3 of these teams. Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas. These 3 teams are clearly standing out among the rest as the alpha dogs in all of college football. Right now, Georgia is just bludgeoning teams, especially that convincing win over Clemson in week one. You got Ohio State and that potent offense. Jeremiah Smith is already coming into his own. He had an amazing game against Western Michigan. And then you got Texas. Texas went into Ann Arbor and stomped Michigan that entire day. Michigan could not keep up with the Longhorns all live long day. So realistically, you can make the argument for all 3 of those teams to be ranked number one in the nation. Where do I have them? Well, now, judging based off what I've seen, I'd have Texas 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3. Ohio State and Georgia is a little bit close for me, but I love Ohio State's offense and defense. I love that combination on their team. Texas, I put on the pedestal at number 1, just because I think they're the most well-rounded team in college football right now. The way they run, the way they pass, the way they play defense, the way they're coached. Overall, I think Texas is just the best team in college football right now, especially after walking into Ann Arbor and beating Michigan convincingly 31-12. It's not easy to walk into any of these big places. I talked about it 2 weeks ago when Miami went into Florida. I was nervous about that game being a Miami fan, but they went in there and handled business. And I was nervous mainly not because Florida was a good team necessarily. It was necessarily because it was an SEC environment, and Florida is notorious for being one of the most toughest places to play in all of college football. So the fact that that Texas just went into Ann Arbor and belligerently beat the brakes off of Michigan, that just says a lot about Texas as a team right now. So the final score of Texas and Michigan, that was obviously the game of the week. Couple takeaways from that: Quin Ewers is by far the best quarterback in college football right now. I know people want to say Carson Beck. I know people want to say Will Howard. I think Quin Ewers is the top quarterback right now in college football, but he's not necessarily, separating himself from the pack as far as like belligerently the best. But I think you can consider, out of all the quarterbacks in college football right now, I think you can consider Quin Ewers the best, followed by like Carson Beck, Miami's Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Well, Alabama got really, really scared against South Florida, so we'll talk about that next. But the fact of the matter is that Michigan is in a world of trouble. Their defense can only do so much. The first quarter, it was a good indication for Michigan's defense. They held Michigan 7 points. But at some point in time, as a team, as an offense, you gotta put some drives together to give that defense a break. Michigan's defense gave up 17 in the second half. In the second quarter to Texas. So it was 24-3 going into halftime. And from there on out, Texas really didn't need to do much because they were already ahead by a good margin. And Michigan, I don't know what the hell their problem is in not running Donovan Edwards so much. I'm pretty sure Donovan Edwards only has like 70 rushing yards the first 2 weeks of college football, and him being one of the cover athletes of EA Sports College Football 25. He was hyped up to be one of the best running backs in college right now. That just hasn't happened. That just really hasn't happened up to this point. So, final takeaway on Texas and Michigan. Texas is for real. They'll be national title contenders, obviously, and I still think they're the best team in the SEC. Michigan, I said they were going to be okay. I don't like their quarterback. I don't like Warren at the quarterback position. I really don't. He struggles to see the field sometimes. It's just not, I don't think that's a good fit for Michigan. I think they're in a world of trouble. I think they should go to Alex Orji to continue the rest of the season, but I think Ohio State is going to bludgeon Michigan at the end of the year. Michigan, they'll win 7 or 8 games. They're not going to amount to too much in the Big Ten this year. They can win 8 games. Like, they're still a good team, but, they're not nearly as good anymore, competing with teams like Texas, Georgia, or Ohio State, or even Bama for that matter. I don't think Michigan can handle any of those teams right now, currently as constructed. So going forward, Texas, I think, is the team to beat in college football. Georgia handled Tennessee Tech 48-3. What a shock. Ohio State 56-0 over Western Michigan. Again, Jeremiah Smith, if people aren't thinking that now, like, he had 119 yards and a touchdown. I honestly think that Jeremiah Smith, as a freshman, is already making his case to being the best wide receiver in college football. And I know Travis Hunter fanboys are going to give me some shit for that, but I'm not saying Travis Hunter isn't the best right now, but Jeremiah Smith is certainly making a case to be the best right now. All right, we have Alabama taking on South Florida. Do not let the 42-16 fool you. That game was a dogfight to the very end until Bama managed to get some turnovers and propel themselves forward. South Florida had them on the ropes damn near that entire game. South Florida had Bama on the ropes. And this was the same thing that happened last year when Nick Saban was still coach. The final score last year was 17-3. South Florida gave Bama everything they had last year. Now, I know the final score doesn't reflect it in this game. There is no reason Alabama should have won this game, if we're being honest. There's no reason South Florida shouldn't have been able to win this game. It shocks me that, again, it doesn't shock me that Bama managed to pull away like it did, but I was thoroughly impressed. The fact that they scored 28 unanswered points after South Florida got that field goal in the fourth quarter to put them within put them within a couple points, a one-possession game. This was a one-possession game going into the final 5 minutes of the Alabama game. At Alabama, too, in Tuscaloosa. Tip of the cap to South Florida. I'm worried about Miami playing them because, they gave what's considered the top dog in the SEC for the better part of 20 years now everything they can handle. But Alabama being Alabama, talent prevails, and Alabama has a lot of talent. A lot of talent. So, realistically, this game should have been like this. The final score should have reflected the entire game, but it really didn't. This could have easily went South Florida's way. I feel like the coach should have went for it on that 4th down rather than kick that field goal, But, hey, that's why I'm not a coach. Okay, so the Miami Hurricanes, they hosted Florida A&M. No shock there that Miami handled business. Looking at this team, I think Miami is set out to be, they're putting the country on notice right now, especially with the convincing win against Florida in week 1, and now Florida A&M. They got Ball State coming up next week. That'll be another win, most likely. But when it comes to Miami, the difference being from years prior is Cam Ward, the quarterback. Cam Ward is already putting himself in Heisman conversation. He already almost has 700 yards through the first two games of the season. Already almost 700 yards. A Miami quarterback, we've not talked about Miami quarterbacks at all over the better part of 10, 20 years. So I made a video months ago that said Ohio State was spoiled with quarterback talent ever since the Troy Smith days. Troy Smith, Terrell Pryor, Braxton Miller, JT Barrett, Cardell Jones, Dwayne Haskins. You got CJ Stroud, Justin Fields. There's just so much talent Ohio State has accumulated over the years when it comes to the quarterback position. Honestly, it was a spoil of riches for Ohio State. Whereas Miami has not had a top-tier quarterback since, honestly, Ken Dorsey back in 2001 and 2002. After that, Miami's quarterback situation kind of went downhill. Everybody hyped up back in 2005. I can remember this, even though being so young at the time. Everybody hyped up Kyle Wright to be the next great Miami quarterback because he went to the same high school as Ken Dorsey. Yeah, Kyle Wright didn't amount to much. Honestly, Miami's quarterback situation since 2011, a better part of 10 years, has been putrid at best. There was that brief time with Malik Rozier and Brad Kaya. So Miami went from Ja'Cory Harris to Stephen Morris. Ryan Williams was supposed to take over that 1 year. Brad Kaya's freshman year. Ryan Williams tore his ACL, can't play. So in comes Brad Kaya, freshman, straight from California. And, he started all 3 years. He started his first 3 years, and he did fairly well. The highest Miami got ranked with Brad Kaya quarterback was 10th, I believe, or 8th. But either way, Brad Kaya he was kind of underwhelming. He was your classic pocket passer quarterback. And then you move into Malik Rozier, who gave Miami their first 10-win season since 2004. And then you transfer into Malik Rozier. Who was next? De'Aaron King. De'Aaron King from the transfer from Houston. And then you go into... No, after Malik Rozier, you had the carousel of quarterbacks between Jaron Williams, N'Kosi Perry, and even Tate Martell for a brief time until De'Aaron King came over from Houston. Miami has just had a carousel of quarterbacks. Ohio State had a carousel of quarterbacks through the years, but those guys were always up for Heisman trophies. Miami quarterbacks, they had talent. None of them were consistent. If there's one thing Miami quarterbacks have always loved to do is throw interceptions back at, in years prior. But recently, up to this year, the quarterback position was not Miami's strength. It was always kind of our weakness. But now, in comes Cam Ward. the most talented quarterback easily in the past 20 years to step foot on Miami's campus. Easily. That includes De'Ara King from this 2020 season. De'Ara King, he was fine. He wasn't that bad. Then you got Tyler Van Dyke. Oh, the carousel of quarterbacks for Miami just drove me insane over the past couple years. And the inconsistent play and the inconsistent coaching. But when you look at Miami as a whole right now, they're 4 deep at running back. They have a deep wide receiving core. They have Cam Ward at the helm. They have a top offensive line in college football. They have one of the deepest defensive lines in all of college football. A great front seven. And they have some decent depth in the secondary. And they have a Lou Groza award finalist in Andres Borregales, their kicker. Miami is set out to, they're putting the country on notice this year. With the 12-team playoff, I think they're easily setting themselves apart in the ACC. I still have hope in Clemson. I do. I know I've smack-talked them for the better part of a couple weeks now because Dabo Swinney is the only coach that won't go into the transfer portal to get players to play now. Out of all the players that took a snap last year, I'm pretty sure 30% were transfers, and none of those were on Clemson. So, people will put me on blasts on social media saying that, oh, you're just following what the mass media says, what ESPN likes to say, what, Fox Sports likes to say. Well, it's reality. Clemson's the only one that didn't go. They're the only big-time program that did not go out and get any big-time transfers. And guess what? Those guys cannot compete with Georgia, with Bama, with those top-tier teams. They just can't. Miami put themselves in that conversation just because of the talent they acquired. When you look at the modern-day college football now, I know it's not like the old days where you just recruit kids and develop them. No. With the transfer portal and with NIL now, it's a completely different monster. This is almost like a professional sport now. It's almost like the pros. College football is now basically a business like the NFL. But it's not controlled by the NCAA because they're a corrupt organization. But when you look at all that stuff, that's why I put Dabo Swinney on blast. They're the only team that didn't have a transfer take a snap last year. That's it. They're the only big-time program that doesn't go out and get players. It drives me up a wall, but Clemson will still be okay. Florida State, I think they'll right the ship. I think. I don't know. DJU cannot be quarterback anymore. He stinks. He's horrible. But we got off topic, but one of the games that really makes me angry, and I hyped them up last week. I talked about after their week 1 victory over Texas A&M, they were going to run the table, go 12-0, get a college football playoff bid at the 5th spot because they can't play in a conference championship. And then Notre Dame goes and lays an egg against Northern Illinois, who up to that point I don't think has ever beaten a top 10 AP ranked opponent. Northern Illinois upsets Notre Dame at home 16-14. How? I literally don't understand this. Their coach at the end of the game, hey, I felt for the man. That I'm so happy for Northern Illinois because that coach, Coach Hampton, you can see how much passion he had in that game and had in that moment with his players and everything. So it was a good win for Northern Illinois. But Notre Dame, where the hell do you go from here? Marcus Freeman, you got to coach better. Riley Leonard, you have to play quarterback better. This dude, I don't know what's going on with Riley Leonard this past week and even parts of week 1. He was much better at Duke when he was still quarterback at Duke. He's, for better parts, shit in the bed. I apologize for my mouth, but, that's basically what it is. He shit the bed. There's no reason. I'm pretty sure Northern Illinois was a 4-touchdown underdog to Notre Dame. They go walk into South Bend, and they hand the Irish their first loss. Now Notre Dame has to play catch-up for the rest of the year. With the 12-team playoff, I still think they'll make it. But I am not high on Notre Dame anymore. I'm not as high as many people might think. that game at the end of the year against USC is going to say a lot, and I think it'll have a lot of implications on the college football playoff. Because the way USC is playing right now, the way Miller Moss is slinging the rock around, the way USC's defense is looking right now with that new revamped pass rush, the lockdown corners they got right now, they're putting the country on notice. I said at the beginning of the year, Notre Dame might go undefeated. Not anymore. I'm going to predict that USC takes Notre Dame to the brink and possibly even beats them at the end of the year and maybe sends Notre Dame packing from even getting into the college football playoff. So we're going to see eventually, but that is, that's just something that can't happen if you're a Notre Dame. If you're in Notre Dame, that just can't happen. You're a 4-touchdown favorite and you lose to Northern Illinois at home. At home. It's not even like you went on the road. That's coaching. That's at some point as players, you got to have more pride when it comes to players. I don't know what it's like being a Division I college football player. I don't. I have no clue what it feels like. But I can imagine you hear all the noise. I can imagine all of them are on Twitter. I can imagine all of that stuff. You hear what people say. Don't you have a little bit more pride? Like going out hey, they're going to be, even though we're a 4-touchdown favorite, we got to go out and handle business. You would think that some players would have heart like that. I don't know. I didn't see anything out of Notre Dame in that game other than just disappointment all the way around. So one final game we're going to talk about, Oregon Ducks. I have no clue what the hell is going on with Oregon. They were hyped up so much in this past offseason. Dylan Gabriel coming in as quarterback, transfer from Oklahoma. Head coach Dan Lanning, continuing to build his culture. Yeah, they barely squeaked by Idaho, and I already called it that I believe Boise State was like a 2-touchdown dog against Oregon. Yeah, guess what? They damn near upset the Ducks. Dylan Gabriel has to play better, but I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to give you my Heisman Trophy, early top 5 players in for the Heisman Trophy right now. This kid, Ashton Jeanie from Boise State, is an absolute animal. Through the first 2 games this year, he already has 459 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns. 9 in 2 games. This dude's an absolute animal right now. Boise State, he's 5'9", 215 pounds from Jacksonville, Florida. He's a junior running back from Boise State. He's putting on a clinic these first 2 weeks. Again, 459 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, averaging 10.2 yards a carry. Oh my. And, Oregon ended up squeaking by and beating Boise State, which doesn't surprise me. And I said Appalachian State might be the best group of 5 team. Best group of 5 team to make the college football playoff this year. I'm taking that back. Boise State with Ashton Jeanie, with him running the rock the way he is, he might well eclipse 2,000 yards rushing this year if he keeps this pace up. And I think he will because they play Portland State this upcoming weekend, and I think he'll have a field day against them. But Boise State's easily the best group of 5 team in all of college football, and that's usually no shock. Boise State has always, they always play good games. They always have great players. I remember Jay Ajayi from years ago, running back from Boise State. He was fantastic. And then you have one of the best college quarterbacks of all time, Kellen Moore. Damn near played for a national title every single year if it wasn't for 1 loss or 2 losses during the season. Boise State's got a hell of a season ahead of them. And Oregon, that game against Ohio State is looking less and less interesting to watch. I would not be surprised if Ohio State pile drives Oregon in 2 weeks. It would not shock me one bit. I think the game's in Oregon, if I remember correctly. Yes, the game is in Oregon. It still wouldn't shock me if the Buckeyes and Ryan Day, Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Quinshon Judkins, and everybody else on that defense and Caleb Downs go into Eugene Stadium. They go into Eugene, Oregon, and absolutely demolish the Oregon Ducks. Oregon's playing with fire with these close games, especially Idaho and now Boise. Even though Boise I kind of saw coming, but there's no reason for Oregon to be ranked as high right now, currently. Okay, so that's a little recap of college football this past week. I'm going to give you my top 5 Heisman Trophy contenders right now. I know it's way early. I'm calling it the way too early college football Heisman Trophy watch. So right now at number 1, I have Ashton Jeanie from Boise State, running back. 459 yards in 2 games and 9 touchdowns in 2 games. That speaks for itself. He's put the country on notice. Number 2, Cam Ward. Say what you want about Miami. Say they're unproven. Say they're not worth it. Say everything about them Canes. Cam Ward's already put himself in Heisman conversation. Coming to Miami was a smart decision for him. Ashton Jeanie, Cam Ward, Quin Ewers from Texas, quarterback from Texas. That's my number 3. Number 4, Travis Hunter. Even though I got to talk about the Nebraska-Colorado game after this, but Travis Hunter, he's an absolute animal at the wide receiver position. He really is. And then 5, Jeremiah Smith. He's putting the country on notice too. So that's my top 5 Heisman Trophy watch list. Currently, after week 2, it goes Ashton Jeanie, Cam Ward, Quin Ewers, Travis Hunter, Jeremiah Smith. Those are my 5 Heisman Trophy contenders currently right now. And about time that somebody put Colorado in their place. I knew Nebraska was going to beat the brakes off of Colorado. Here's what I don't get. I don't get why so many people are hyping up Shedeur Sanders, Deion's kid. Sure, he's good. Or is he? Here's a couple stats I want to throw out at everybody for Shedeur Sanders, because I heard a report the other day. I heard some ESPN analysts or Fox analysts. I've heard some analysts say that Shedeur Sanders is the number 1 quarterback coming into the draft next year. Really? Are you shitting me? Really? You think he's the number 1 quarterback in the nation? Okay. Well, let's see. So in his career at Colorado, so far it's a year and 2 games. He has 3,919 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, or 7 turnovers. Okay. Not too bad. Not too bad. He has won a total of 5 games. 5 games at Colorado. He's won a total of 5. And he is 1-5 against teams in the top 25. Ranked in the AP poll, top 25, Shedeur Sanders is 1-5 against the AP top 25. The only win he has is against TCU early in the season opener of last season, a team in TCU that lost all their talent to the NFL draft and just got off of a national championship embarrassment, losing to Georgia 68-3 or 68-7. I don't even remember the final score, but it was ridiculous. So for those who want to talk about Shedeur Sanders being the top dog quarterback coming out next year, he's not that good. Jimmy Horn Jr. and Travis Hunter, they make Shedeur Sanders look way better than he actually is. I will go to the ends of the earth saying that. I don't know what people on ESPN see. I don't know what people on Fox see. I don't know what people on CBS see. I don't know what anybody in these, high-profile analyst jobs, I don't know what they see in Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it's because they have, more access than I would. But here's the thing. 1-5 against the top 25 speaks for itself. Colorado's not a good team. They're not. They're the most overhyped 4-8 team from a year ago. They're 1-1 this year. Their only win so far against North Dakota State, an FCS school, which people were getting so hyped that, Shedeur Sanders threw for 450 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, you should do that. That's an FCS school. They play in Youngstown State's league, my alma mater's league, and we're Division I AA. If you're Shedeur Sanders, you should be putting up those kind of numbers. And you still almost lost the game against North Dakota State. For all intents and purposes, you should have lost that game. It drives me up a wall. Speaking of Youngstown State, shout out to Bo Brungard, our quarterback. Over 190 rushing yards. Damn, man. Represent Mahoning County. There you go, man. Shout out to you, Bo Brungard. That was a hell of a game you played against Valpo this past weekend. But back to Colorado. There's no reason he should be considered a top quarterback prospect going into next year's draft. Some people calling him number one. Okay, well, we got Dylan Gabriel. Even though I'm not high on the Ducks right now, I'm high on Dylan Gabriel. Is Shedeur Sanders better than Gabriel? I don't think so. Cam Ward, senior at Miami now. Is Shedeur Sanders better than Cam Ward? Absolutely not. Jackson Dart. Is Shedeur Sanders better than Jackson Dart of Ole Miss? No, not at all. Is he better than Quin Ewers from Texas? Absolutely not. Is he better than Arch Manning at Texas, the backup to Quin Ewers? I don't think so. Is he better than Jalen Milroe from Alabama? I don't think so. Is he better than Carson Beck from Georgia? Absolutely not. So I listed 6 quarterbacks that are better than Shedeur Sanders, and Arch Manning isn't even coming out for the draft next year. He'll be the starting quarterback at Texas next year once Quin Ewers goes to the draft. You know, there's a lot of BS going around in college football when it comes to Shedeur Sanders and how good he really is. Well, like I said, he has a 5-8 career record at UC right now, at Colorado right now. He's won 5 games as a starter, okay? Now, Colorado isn't a great team, but he's 1-5 against the AP Top 25, and I think Travis Hunter's otherworldly. Same thing with Jimmy Horn. He's so fast. Those two guys inflate Shedeur Sanders' stats. I don't think Shedeur is that good of a quarterback, and until proven otherwise, I will go forward and say that. So it's like the more this crap goes on, the more, angry I get because he's not a good quarterback whatsoever. I really think he's trash. He's not that good of a quarterback. I think he's overhyped, overinflated because of the way Travis Hunter plays and Jimmy Horn plays. Those two guys, those two guys will make differences in the NFL. Shedeur Sanders, I don't think he's even remotely close to that kind of level. I don't think he'll be ready to play in the NFL. Sorry, Dion, but that's the reality of Shedeur Sanders. His stats are inflated because of 2 great wide receivers, and he's only won 1 game against the AP Top 25 opponent, that being TCU, who just came off a 60-point loss to Georgia in the national championship from the year prior. So don't give me none of that BS that Shedeur Sanders is good, because he's not. All right, let's move on to the NFL. And we got quite a few things to talk about here. First of all, Dak Prescott. We're going to talk about the Cleveland game first. Cleveland and Dallas. Tom Brady's first game commentating. Well, here's the thing. Dak Prescott got his money. 4 years, $240 million. 231 of that fully guaranteed. $60 million a year. I called it. Everybody and their mother has called it. That Dak Prescott would have got a $60 million contract. Well, he threw for less than 200 yards against Cleveland. Is that worth $60 million a year? It wasn't really that convincing of a win against the Browns. The Browns were without their 2 starting tackles, without Nick Chubb. He's out till week 4 of the season. And Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Final score 33-17. I think that was just more an indictment on how bad Deshaun Watson is as a quarterback. At some point, you have to show out for the money you're making. At some point, you are expected to deliver for the amount of cash that is going into your bank account. Cleveland still keeps cutting the checks for Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson is absolutely putrid. He is not the Houston quarterback that we have known for years. We were talking about Deshaun Watson years ago being an MVP candidate, a dark horse MVP candidate, and the quarterback that could have led Houston back to relevance. Yeah, that went up in smoke. We can't keep talking about how much time off of football he took, because he's still a creep. I'm not a fan of Deshaun Watson as the person or the player either. He's horrible in both. But at some point, you got to show up for the money you're making. The Haslam family wrote this man basically a blank check for not playing football in over a year and a half. And now you see the way Deshaun Watson plays. He was 0 for 10 on passes 10 or more yards. 0 for 10. It was all dink and dunk. It reminds me of Florida State in college. They couldn't do anything with Watson, that quarterback. Now, I know he was out of his 2 starting tackles. He doesn't have Nick Chubb. But damn, can you give me something? You still have Amari Cooper. You still have David Njoku. Jerome Ford is not a scrub. At some point, you got to show up for your money. And I think Deshaun Watson, he's on the thinnest string right now with Cleveland. I wouldn't be surprised if they bench him for Jameis Winston within the next 2 weeks. I like Jameis Winston better than Deshaun Watson. I think Jameis Winston was humbled quite a bit since leaving Tampa Bay. But I would take Winston over Deshaun Watson right now. Watson is absolutely god-awful and putrid. Dak Prescott wasn't that much more impressive. 193 yards or something like that. And a 33-17 win over Cleveland. Wasn't really special. Again, they'll win games in the regular season. I'm talking about Dallas here. They'll win games in the regular season. They love to do that. They really do. Come playoff time, that's a different person. That's a different quarterback. That's a different team. I get why they signed Dak Prescott. Who else do you have going forward? You're going to be good. You're not going to be terrible enough to get one of the top 5 draft picks in the NFL, so you're not going to get one of the top quarterback prospects. And you're not good enough to where you're going to win a Super Bowl. So you're kind of left in limbo right now. Dak Prescott, is he a good quarterback? Yes. Is he otherworldly? No. Is he on the same level of Mahomes? No. Where do I have Dak Prescott ranked? He's a top 10 quarterback. I like him. I like Brock Purdy more than him, but I like Brock Purdy more than him, but I would still put Dak Prescott as a better quarterback ahead of Brock Purdy, but that's neither here nor there. But looking at the way Dak played, he played fine. Looking at the way Watson played, I can see why the Cleveland faithful is getting impatient and upset. There's too much talent on the Cleveland roster to be playing like this. There's too much talent to put this monstrosity out on the field. Not being able to move the ball, not being able to throw the ball 10 or more yards, over 10 on passes 10 yards or longer. That's pitiful. Other games we're going to talk about. Baltimore, the first game of the season, Baltimore against Kansas City. Yet again, Patrick Mahomes has another weapon. It seems like let me tell you, Xavier Worthy is going to be the next Tyreek Hill in Kansas City. Xavier Worthy already 2 touchdowns in his debut as a rookie from Texas. Let me tell you, Kansas City, they don't rebuild, they reload. It seems like it doesn't matter what they do, they always find a way to win. However, Baltimore should have won that game if it wasn't for the tiptoe of the tight end Lively. Oh, man. When I saw that, I wanted to be sick. But, I think you're looking at the 2 best teams in possibly the AFC. Maybe. Because here's the thing. Pittsburgh is the only team in the AFC North this week to not score an offensive touchdown or a touchdown at all and still win a game. Baltimore lost to Kansas City. Cleveland lost to Dallas. Cincinnati lost to the Patriots. All 3 of the other teams in the AFC North scored touchdowns, except Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is the only one who won this past week against Atlanta. Chris Boswell, you're the best. We love you, Chris Boswell, from fellow Steeler fan, and I speak for all of Steeler Nation. We love you, man. This is what drives me up a wall about Pittsburgh. The offensive line looked a little better in the second half. Obviously, Russell Wilson didn't play because he re-aggravated his calf or his hamstring. I forget which one it is, but in comes Justin Fields. Terrible first half. Can't handle the damn snap whatsoever. I don't get how you can be a quarterback and just not handle the snap. I don't understand that. I really don't. But I will say Justin Fields showed a little bit of promise in the second half, especially throwing that deep ball to George Pickens. George Pickens is just so good. And Pittsburgh's defense is otherworldly, and TJ Watt is obviously, clearly, without a doubt, the best defensive player in the whole NFL. It's not even close. It really isn't. When TJ Watt plays, Pittsburgh wins. When he doesn't play, they lose. And especially having Minkah back, Pittsburgh's defense is going to be awesome this year. 2 picks in this past game and a fumble recovery, forcing 3 turnovers against an Atlanta team that I've had in my outskirts of possibly winning this, dark horse Super Bowl contender. Shout out to Pittsburgh, man. Again, the only team in the AFC North without a touchdown this week to win a game. Give us that AFC North crown, baby. We're coming for the playoffs this year. So some other takeaways from week 1 in the NFL. Baker Mayfield, I love how he got his money in Tampa Bay. It's awesome. It really is. The way that I kept telling people for months that, hey, Cleveland should have kept Baker. Hey, Cleveland should have kept Baker. There was another game I wanted to talk about, and that's Carolina at New Orleans. Now, I predicted last week that this would be a snooze fest, that this is just, this isn't a game that's worth watching. Well, it sure as hell wasn't worth watching if you were a Carolina Panthers fan. New Orleans beat the brakes off of Carolina 47-10. Derek Carr looked like he reverted back to his Raider form, and Alvin Kamara still had his way with 83 rushing yards. Where do you go from here if you're Carolina? Where do you go from here? Carolina is just god-awful. They're putrid. I didn't see this coming whatsoever. I don't know where you go from here, Carolina. I really don't. Bryce Young, I still don't think he has a shred of hope to succeed in Carolina because he has still nobody around him. You get Jonathan Brooks back later in the year from that injury, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Carolina might be fighting for the number 1 overall pick next year for all we know now. The way they looked after week 1, oh my Lord, did they get their asses kicked. And then one final game so Detroit won in overtime against the Los Angeles Rams. How about that? I called that last week, that Jared Goff got the better of Stafford in the playoffs, and he got the better of him now in the regular season. So that's a wash. I already predicted that. How about the Chicago Bears beating the Tennessee Titans without an offensive touchdown? It really drives me up a wall seeing this sort of garbage. But people are hyping up Caleb Williams. He had 93 passing yards. No touchdowns, no picks, 15 rushing yards. What a debut. Good for Caleb Williams, good for the Bears. They needed it. They really did. And, honestly, good for Buffalo, too. A lot of people, Josh Allen is still otherworldly. There's not much else to say other that he's just otherworldly. So, quick predictions for next week. Obviously, this Thursday, we got Buffalo traveling to Miami. And the way Miami played this past week, that's a game up in the air. I can't wait to see New Orleans go to Dallas. That might be a great game to watch. Los Angeles Chargers are going to pile drive the Carolina Panthers. Cleveland goes on the road to Jacksonville. Pittsburgh on the road to Denver. Chicago on the road to Houston. And then next Monday night matchup, we got Atlanta going to Philly. So there's a lot of good games coming up. And then obviously the Friday night game from last week, I knew Saquon Barkley was going to help the Eagles. I really did. Saquon Barkley is the real deal. And not that anybody didn't know that already, but I said, and this is kind of an out-of-pocket thing, I said that he would put the league on notice to where, he should be considered the best running back in the NFL over Christian McCaffrey. And I think it's going to happen this year. Okay, so we're going to make some quick predictions. Now, just to finish off the show, we're going to do some quick predictions for college football this next week. So we got Kansas State and Arizona. I'm going to take Kansas State. we got Alabama and Wisconsin. I'm going to take Alabama. I really am. I think Alabama bounces back from that terrible performance. I know they won by a convincing margin, but that was not a convincing game against South Florida. I think Wisconsin keeps it close. I really do. So I'm going to take Bama, though, probably in a 28-24 kind of game against Wisconsin. We got Boston College going against Missouri. Missouri is favored by 16.5. I'm going to take Boston College to cover the spread. I love Thomas Castellanos from Boston College. You know, he's a runner. He's a dual threat. And we got Kyle Robichaux at running back. I really think Boston College has a chance to keep this close. I don't think Missouri, I mean, I know they're ranked 6th in the nation, but I don't know. I think Boston College will keep it close. You got Oregon going against Oregon State. I'll take Oregon to right the ship finally and bludgeon their rival, Oregon State. Miami plays Ball State. I'm going to take the Canes, as always. Notre Dame plays Purdue. I'll take Notre Dame to right the ship against Purdue because I think that game was a fluke against Northern Illinois. I think Notre Dame has way too much talent that they left on the field. You know, I think Notre Dame is a way better team than people give credit for, and I think they're a way better team than what they put out on the field against Northern Illinois. So I'm going to take the Irish to right the ship and beat Purdue, get back in the win column. Georgia plays Kentucky. That'll be a bludgeoning defeat for Kentucky. Georgia's going to beat the brakes off of them. Then we got Kent State playing number 7 Tennessee, going to Tennessee. Tennessee's going to walk all over Kent State. But how funny would it be if Kent State went into Tennessee and actually won? That would be awesome. I would drive up to Kent and party with that whole team that night if that happened, but you know, I doubt that'll happen. So that's going to be a wrap-up for this week on The Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends. Leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is